Hello, it's Mr. Singleton. I'm one of the Associate Directors for Outward Academy. This is a lesson all about the lungs. So this is a specification. You can get hold of this specification. All you have to do is go on to the internet, search in AQA, Combined Science or Biology specification, and it will tell you all the stuff that you need to know for your exams. So on this lesson, we're just going to cover the lungs. If you need to go through the heart, please go back and look at a previous lesson which is titled The Heart. This one is just going to be about the lungs and how they're adapted for something called gaseous exchange. So that, in terms of the lungs, that is how oxygen goes into the body and carbon dioxide comes out of the body. And all you need to know are these structures. So you just need to know the trachea, the bronchi, the alveoli, and the fact that there's some capillaries around there. Just get your brain in gear, just get you thinking about this. These are the percentages of gases which go in to your lungs and then come out of your lungs. I want you to have a look at it and tell me what you think it shows, which gases are being used in the body, which gases are being released from the body, which gases aren't being used at all. There's obviously 3 different things on this because there's 3 different gases. So it's like one of those compare tables that you might get in your exams. I'll give you 30 seconds, write it on a whiteboard or in the back of your book. Off you go. Okay, you got 10 more seconds. Right, let's have a look at this. So what it should show you is that oxygen, the body takes in oxygen because it's gone from 21% and it's gone down to 16%. And that does mean that it doesn't take all of that oxygen in. It does get rid of some. This is why people can carry out mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, because when they are breathing out some oxygen, which can then go into that person. The carbon dioxide increases, which means that it gives out more carbon dioxide. So it's gone up 3.96%, which means you are getting rid of that carbon dioxide. That's also why it can be dangerous to just practice mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on a normal body. That's why you use them dummies instead. And the nitrogen is not used at all. It's the main part of the air, but it's not used at all. I want you to write this title into your books, or if you're using a revision card, onto your revision card. This is still biology, paper 1. So put that, if you're doing your revision card, put that in the top corner just so you remember. It's out of a topic called Organisation, but that's your title. Make sure you underline it with today's date if you're doing this in your book. I'll give you 30 seconds to do that. If you need to, if you haven't got your equipment ready, then obviously just pause this lesson, get the stuff done. You can pause this lesson whenever you need to. If I'm going a bit too fast, just pause the lesson and get the little bits done that you need to do, and then restart it. The challenge for today is to describe the structure and function of the lungs. So remember, on that specification, it talked about those three structures that you need to know, and you need to know what the lungs actually do. And then the aspire is to explain the adaptations. So how are the lungs adapted? Now, obviously, for this lesson, what I have done is I've gone into a school and dissected these lungs for you. So if you are squeamish, then you know there is a video of this dissection of the lungs in there. You might want to do some other work around it instead of watching. So the dissection I'm going to show you is looking at the trachea, which is that main pipe, the bronchus. I'm going to show you the bronchioli. It's not on the specification, but I am going to show you that bit, and the alveoli. So I'm going to talk through that so you know what each part does before I show you this dissection. So the trachea is that main pipe, and some people call it a windpipe, but in science we like to give things technical terms. So in this case, the windpipe is called the trachea, and that is connected to your mouth and nose. so that you can breathe in through either of those and get oxygen into your lungs. That trachea then splits into two pipes because you've got two lungs. So we have to split into two pipes, and those two pipes are called the bronchus. The bronchus then splits into smaller pipes. And again, this is a bit that you probably don't need to know, but it does break off into smaller pipes called the bronchioli. And then they go into these really important little air sacs called the alveoli. And those alveoli are mega important because they are the bits which give the lungs such a massive surface area. And that allows lots and lots of oxygen into your body and lots of carbon dioxide out of your body.
Right, so these
So
are
here is
lungs.
the lung
These are two
dissection.
quite small lungs. So this is one lung here, and this is the other lung here. And then you've got this nice long pipe. This is the trachea here. Now we'll have a little talk about this trachea. It's really important. It's really well designed. Look at that. Look away if you're squeamish. Put a bit of blood in there. There's quite a bit of blood in there. That's going to be fun later on. Okay, so I would have the mouth, which would then, and nose, which would then bring oxygen, or air in fact, all right, down through and into this trachea here. Now, really, really well designed this. Not got bone around it, okay, not got bone around it for a reason. That's because this is nice and flexible. So if you tilt your head forward, you can still breathe, okay, and it's not going to break or anything. So it's a real nice flexible. This is cartilage, the same stuff that's in your ear, okay, and the same stuff that's in your nose. And look at this. This isn't good for this animal. This has already got a slit in the cartilage. That's a real issue because obviously most of the oxygen or air then doesn't get down. The other interesting bit about this cartilage, if we just go into it, okay, it is, let's cut through there. It is actually C-shaped. So if I just cut this, I can see just like, it looks like ribs nearly. If I just cut through here, okay, it's all cartilage around here. So this is cartilage, 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 cartilage. But then at the bottom here, it's actually not. So it's quite easy. He says it's quite easy. This will be quite easy to cut just here. So it's C-shaped. And that allows it to expand, okay? So it's got this C shape here and then just a bit of tissue there just to connect it back together on these bits. And that just allows it to expand out to get as much oxygen in as possible. But other than that, it's just a narrow tube, quite a wide tube, sorry. All right, it's just a tube which allows the oxygen to go through, all the air to go through. Now notice, and we'll come on to these, all right, these are the lungs, but notice how close this organ is here, and this is the heart. Okay, the heart is so close to the lungs, all right, because all of this oxygenated blood, once it gets there, needs to get straight to the heart, so it can be pumped back round to the body and to everywhere else. All right, so that's really, really important that that heart is so close to the lungs. So here is my trachea. All right, I have this tube here, okay, which I can put into the trachea, which will allow me to blow these up. So I'm just feeding this into here. All right, and this trachea will split into two pipes called the bronchi. All right, so one pipe, one bronchi will go into this lung here, and one bronchi will go into here. I'm just trying to fiddle, and I'm in this lung. Okay, so I'm going to breathe into this lung. Actually, I'm going to try and get into the other lung because I can see that this is being cut already. The reason why they cut then is to make sure there's no disease, so that when I do blow into this, if I accidentally suck up, I won't be ill. All right, but this is a bit harder then. I think it's going to the same one. So I'm going to blow into this, and you can see what happens to your lungs when you breathe in. This is all through your diaphragm, remember? All right. Now hopefully we got that on camera. I'll just do that one more time, but you can see this is one of my deep breaths. All right, I'm 6'2". I've got big lungs. This is what one of my deep breaths will do to this lung. Right, so that lung can inflate a massive amount, and remember there's two lungs here. All right, now I've only blown up one with one deep breath. I'm going to just try and pinch this once I've finished it. All right, so that is how much it can inflate. You can see compared with this one and this one how much it inflates, and that is due to all of the alveoli which are in here. All right, let's just have a bit more of a look at these structures. So I've got my trachea here. It splits off into two pipes, one into this long and one into this long. They are called the bronchi. Now this has been cut quite nicely here. And this just depends on how good my camera is. Now, if you can see just here, there is a small hole. These are more small tubes called bronchioli. Okay, so one pipe splits into two pipes, which then splits into lots of pipes to then feed the oxygen into all these little tiny air sacs called alveoli. The alveoli is about 500 million in your lungs, okay? So that will increase the surface area, and then the blood can get to the lungs and get to lots of the area of the lungs and get as much oxygen as possible. And remember, it's also to get rid of all that carbon dioxide out of the lungs and out of your body. That is the dissection of the lungs. That is basically the structure you need to know.
So, just to recap on those ones, the trachea, that's the windpipe that delivers air into the lungs. It's C-shaped so it can expand and get as much oxygen in as possible. The bronchus, they're the two pipes that split from the trachea and take it into the two lungs. And then you've got the bronchioli, which are the small tubes. You don't need to worry too much about them, but it just doesn't make sense. They don't go from the big tube into the little tiny air sacs as you go into smaller tubes. The alveoli are the really important bits, tiny little air sacs which allow the oxygen into the blood and carbon dioxide into the lungs from the bloodstream. So I want you to go and have a go at the Google quiz that I've set up for you. So open it up, answer a couple of questions about the structure of the lungs, and then we'll talk a little bit more about breathing and the adaptations. I'll give you 4 minutes. Off you go. Okay, you've got 30 more seconds. So we looked at the structure of the lungs and we should know the function of the lungs. Now we just need to see how it comes together. So this is how you would breathe in. So you've got this muscle just below your lungs, which is called your diaphragm. If you've ever had a stitch when you've been running, what that is there's a tendon which attaches your diaphragm to your liver. And as you are breathing hard, it stretches. So because you are using that muscle, that diaphragm so much, that's what causes that stitch. So the diaphragm is this muscle that's just at the bottom of the lungs. And what happens is when you breathe in, it starts to flatten down. Instead of being curved, really nice and curved, it flattens down, and that sucks air in because it creates more volume in your lungs, which then causes air to be sucked in. Your ribs also have a massive part to play. They're not just there to protect your lungs, but have these little muscles in between your ribs called your intercostal muscles. Think about spare ribs that you get at the Chinese and things like that. That is the intercostal muscles is the meat part of that spare rib. And what the ribs do is they move outwards and up, and that will cause more volume to be in your lungs, which draws more air in. Okay, so your diaphragm's going to flatten and you tense. Your diaphragm then tenses and contracts and causes your lungs to pull down and draw air in, and your ribs will move up and out. To breathe out, actually your diaphragm relaxes back into this curved shape and your ribs will go back inwards, and that releases the air. I've just shown you a quick diagram from a side view. So this first picture is obviously air being brought in. That diaphragm will pull downwards. That diaphragm's just at the bottom where that blue arrow pointing downwards is. And the little red arrows are the ribs pulling outwards. Then to exhale, what happens is that diaphragm moves back up and pushes the air out of the lungs. So looking at that structure that we've seen, we've talked about a few adaptations that it's got. So I was wanting to come up with a list of 3 adaptations that makes it really good for exchanging surfaces. Think about diffusion. We've talked about diffusion previously. So think about diffusion and how that's used. And think about how you can increase the speed of diffusion and how that's being done in the lungs. I'm just going to give 30 seconds to start think about it. Off you go. Okay. So these are the 4 features that you might have come up with. So it's got a large surface area. That's really important. The larger the surface area, the quicker the diffusion. It's also permeable, so it allows things through it, and it's also very, very thin. The thinner it is, the easier it is for the oxygen to move across and the carbon dioxide to move out to get out. And it's also moist, and that just helps it to move a lot quicker. The other thing that's not mentioned on here is it's got a very good blood supply. The more blood bringing oxygen means that it will bring the carbon dioxide to the lungs and get rid of it very quickly, and then take the oxygen away with it. And we say that it maintains a concentration gradient. So if the blood just stayed there for a long time, then it would get all the oxygen in, and then it wouldn't be able to diffuse anymore. Because remember, diffusion is the process of movement from a high concentration to a low concentration. If it's there for a long time, then that oxygen in the body, in the blood, won't be as low a concentration in the blood, and therefore then it won't diffuse in as much. So here's a little bit of a close-up. We've got the bronchioli and then the alveoli, and you see how much of a good blood supply that's got. So the deoxygenator is coming in, it gets rid of that carbon dioxide, it fills up with oxygen, and then it moves out straight away. It needs to be thin. It just speeds up the rate of diffusion. Anything thick is going to take a long time for the oxygen to go through several cells until it actually gets to where it wants to be. It doesn't want that. It wants smaller cells to go through. So Google quiz time. Have a go at those quiz questions, and I'll give you 4 minutes. Off you go. You've got 2 more minutes. You've got 1 more minute. So that is the challenge done. We've described the structure of the lungs, so we know about the trachea and then the bronchi and then the alveoli, and then it's got a good blood supply. And we know how we breathe in, so that intercostal muscles in the ribs move out when you breathe in, and your diaphragm will flatten down, and that will draw air in. And then we've talked about the fact that when you breathe out, the diaphragm relaxes and pushes back up into a dome shape and pushes the air out, and your ribs and your intercostal muscles will move back in. And we've also talked about the adaptation. So we've talked about the fact that it's got a thin diffusion pathway. We talked about it's got good blood supply. We talked about it's got a large surface area and it's moist, etc. If you are doing a revision card, once again, I would suggest that you do this. Make sure you write at the top that it's biology paper 1, because this is the exam that you'll get in May. And also make sure that you've got a title on it, which is lungs. And these are the things that I would include. So lungs are used in breathing. The route of oxygen goes into the trachea, into the bronchi or bronchus, if it's a plural, into the bronchioli and then into the alveoli. The diaphragm, then it would go into the blood. The diaphragm is a muscle which is just below the lungs, which flattens when you breathe in, and the intercostal muscles push the ribs out. If you're ever struggling with this in an exam, just put your hand on your chest and take a deep breath in and try to feel what happens. You'll get a mark for saying that your rib cage moves outwards, at least. And then when you are breathing out, your diaphragms and intercostal muscles will relax, which reduces the pressure in there, and that forces the air out. The lungs are adapted by having lots of those tiny air sacs called alveoli, and that increases the surface area, which allows more oxygen to diffuse into the blood. They're also moist, and they've got a good blood supply to take the oxygen away back into the heart. And a great phrase that pays in terms of getting marked is it maintains a high concentration gradient. If you are struggling to get all this down, then please pause it. I will leave it on for 4 minutes so you can write these down. Off you go. Okay, you got 30 more seconds if you're still writing them down. Right, that is the end. There are exam questions, so I would suggest printing them off if you can, and then doing them and putting them into your book. If not, then have a go at them on a piece of paper and then hand them in to your teacher. Well done, guys. Keep it up. Keep going.